What's up, fellas? In today's video, I'm going to be ranting a little bit because this is something that I've had an issue with for a long time, and I can't understand it. And it's finally gotten to me. And it's former NBA players like disdain for either the current league or current players or the way the game is played, or just overall, like it doesn't seem like they like the league that much, and it's really irritating because not only are their criticisms not valid, but like, why would they not want to promote the league that they once were stars in? Really bugs me. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. But if you are new here, what's up? My name's Tucker. I upload twice a day, every day on this channel. It's a great place for consistent NBA content. If that is something that you're looking for, consider subscribing. You can also leave a like rating on the video as well. It really helps me out a ton. It doesn't take long and helps get the videos out to more people on YouTube. And you check me out at various socials in a link tree down in the description below. Every single social media I have is in that link. With those things said, let's talk about this. Okay, so whether it's Shaq, whether it's Oscar Robertson, whether it's any number of former players, often, way too often, we see comments about how the current players would never last back in, the 80s, the 90s, the 70s, whatever era they played in, right? Or how current players are soft, or they don't have the necessary skills, they don't score enough in the mid-range, they don't do this, they don't do that, and how the league is just not the same. And this really bugs me on a couple of fronts. Let's first, address the most obvious issue, and then we'll get to kind of the criticism specifically. So the most obvious issue for me is a lot of these players are like, media members. Guys like Shaq are like literally on TV multiple times a week. And not necessarily that they're supposed to be like always positive in promoting the league, but they shouldn't necessarily be always criticizing the product as a whole either. Like when you're criticizing a specific player because of how they play, because you think this era is soft, that can be your opinion, right? But if you are a fan of the NBA and you want the NBA to succeed, why would you continue to harp on that and make the product come across in a negative way? Unless you actually believe that your comments are so important that somehow the league will change in a direction in which you like, which I think is not the best mindset. It doesn't really make any sense from a promotional standpoint. And maybe at this point you're saying, well, Tucker, that's not their job. Their job is not necessarily to promote the NBA. Their job is to analyze and talk about the game and say what they see. And that's fair, but there should be a balance there. Like there should be a balance between, some of the things about the current game are a little bit rough compared to when I played, but I really respect the talent level that's being brought to the table, and I respect the, how good these players are. There's none of that. It's literally just, oh, they're soft, or oh, they don't play the game the right way, or oh, back in my day, right? And the criticism specifically are basically, oh, they take too many threes, they're too soft, there's no contact, there's no defense, things like that. Well, here's the thing. If you want to be mad about that, I'm not necessarily saying you're wrong. It's definitely a less physical era. It is a more finesse-based era than some in the past, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, right? However, I would argue that one, the players have nothing to do with that. The players did not come together and create the new rule book that has said that there's no hand checking on the perimeter and that the most efficient shot in the game is a three-point shot. The players did not come together and make those new rules. They are playing within the confines of rules that were created to create a better basketball product than what was being played in the early 2000s specifically, because the league was just not as entertaining as it is now. So that was a league mandate and a league initiative to create a more entertaining product. It doesn't have anything to do with the players. They didn't have a meeting and decide this. They are just playing in the best way that they can within the rules that they've been given. So don't blame the players if you think it's too much of a finesse league. And if you want to be mad about, oh, they take too many threes or whatever the case may be, that's just the way the game is played. There are evolutions to the game all the time, right? Like we used to be shooting off one leg and there was no 3-point line and dudes, there'd be 1,000 possessions a game. Like the game used to be wildly different, and it evolves and it changes and it adapts. And if you don't like the way the game is currently played, that's fine, but that doesn't make the game wrong. That is just an opinion that you have and a preference that you have, because they're just playing within the confines of the current rules. Because at times, if you go back and watch early 2000s games, it is awful. And I would also argue that in comparison specifically to the early 2000s, not necessarily the glory days of Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, I'm not comparing the current league to that. But if you're comparing the league specifically to the early 2000s, the league is wildly more popular now as a whole than it was back then, which again was part of the reason for instigating changes like this. So if you want to criticize the game itself and the integrity of basketball as a whole, I guess, but like the league is doing what it thinks is best, and all your criticism is doing is making you look bad and making you look like the back in my day guy, while also making the league look bad because you're supposed to, Shaq specifically is supposed to be like the, this big name in the media and this great all-time player, and he doesn't like the way the game is played currently. I don't understand that, and I just, it really bugs me because they always want to compare what's happening in the league right now to their era, right? Which is the most nonsensical argument you can possibly make, because let's just take Shaq for an example, okay? Shaq has grown up in an era in which the big man is emphasized, right? And he goes to LSU, he's an absolute animal, he's a freak of nature, he goes to the NBA, the big man is emphasized. And that, the player that Shaq became and the utilization of Shaq as a player was affected by the way basketball was played and the preferences of the game at the time. And the exact same thing is the case for players right now. Do you think that if Jason Tatum grew up in the 60s, he'd be shooting threes right now? No. So, like, it's not the players that are creating this game around themselves. Like, they're growing up and they're watching the game and they're watching the game develop, and they're adapting their game and growing their game in a way that is conducive to the era in which they grew up. That's fine, but everybody's going to know it for exactly what it is, and that is just yourself boosting your own ego. If you were a former player that played in that era and you want to come out and try and tell me that Luka or whoever would not be successful in your era, you're just wrong. You're wrong. You can talk about the physicality, and the Steph Curry thing was probably the biggest one, right? There's like Oscar Robertson, all these guys, for whatever reason, they don't like Steph. They think he takes too many shots. They think he's too skinny. They think that he, can't handle physicality. Steph would put some of those dudes in a blender without a doubt. And would it take an adjustment if you took 2016 Steph and just took him out of this timeline and put him back in the 80s? Would it be a bit of an adjustment for him to deal with the physicality? Yes. But you know what else would happen is if Steph played in the 80s, he would have grown up in an era that was much more physical, and his game would have been entirely different. So there's no comparison. Like, every single current player and every single player that came before, for the most part, with very, very, very few exceptions, very few transcendent player exceptions, were a product of the era in which they grew up, in the era of basketball in which they participated. And that is why they became the players that they did from an archetype standpoint. Like, there's a reason why guys in the 80s and 90s generally grew up and became more physical basketball players, because the game was more physical, there was hand checking, there wasn't as many three-point shots, and the same is the case for current players, because when they were growing up, they saw everybody taking threes, and when they saw, in the AAU circuit, everybody was doing all these things, and they said, well, that's the way basketball is played, and that's what I'm going to do. And that is the case for every single era. And the last point that I will make here is I am so tired of the physicality argument, of the game was so much more physical back in my day, and we had to walk uphill both ways in the snow on the way to the arena, and these guys are soft. What do you expect someone to do? Do you want someone to come out and clothesline somebody to prove that, the league is more physical now? The league has created rules to A, protect player safety, and B, make the game less physical, intentionally so. So that is not the player's fault. And if you want to be, mad at the league as a whole, I don't think that's necessarily the best thing for the game. If you care about the game at all, then you wouldn't say those things. So I cannot fathom the logic of any of the arguments being made. I don't know. I guess tomorrow these former players want, these guys to show up and play, 48 minutes of hard defense every single night and punch the crap out of each other every time they get in the lane, and only shoot long twos and post up every play, score 90 points a game. I guess that's what they want. They think that's a better basketball product, and based off their criticism, I guess that's what they're going for. I don't know. It's incredibly frustrating. Sometimes I just need to rant about things like that, things like this. And that's what today's video was. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this type of content and you're looking for more, you can check out the boxes on screen, as well as just subscribe to the channel as a whole. Like I said, I upload super consistently here. So if that's something you're looking for, this is a great place to be. You can also leave a like rating on the video as well. Helps get the video out to more people on YouTube. And you can check me out at various socials down in the description below, and a link tree down there. With all this thing said, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.